welcome to Live Interactive English. Hello, everyone. I'm Mike.
And I'm Rainbow.
And we have a very interesting, I'm glad this is a one-day article. I don't think I'd like to talk about this for 2 days.
Oh, it sounds awful.
Because, yeah, our title is AD 536 or 536, the worst year in history.
That's really extreme.
Well, I mean, you know, we've got, what, about 5,000 years of history to talk about. Actually, no, maybe more like 7,000 years, because it was around 5,000 years before Christ, or 5,000 BC, people could write. And you can't have history without writing. So, you know, maybe the year that asteroid hit the Earth and killed all the dinosaurs, that could have been the worst year in history, certainly for dinosaurs, but we weren't there to see it. But people were there to see AD 536 and to write down and record all of the terrible, terrible things that happened that year. That's why we know about it. A little note here. AD is short for the Latin Anno Domini, meaning the year of our Lord. When you read that in front of a date, it basically means after the year 0, when Jesus was born, according to, you know, the system that we have. Sometimes we also write it 536 CE, or Common Era. That, of course, is the time we live in now. So right now we're in AD 2025. But AD 536 was apparently the worst year. I'm not sure about this year. Can you think of other really terrible years for people and, you know, the world and history?
World War II.
Ooh, 1939. The year it started.
Great Depression.
That could be bad. 1929, that
plague?
Could be a bad one. The plague was actually several years. That was like the 1300s, I think 1342. It hit Britain and killed like 25% of the people, but it had actually affected other places. 1968, that was a year of big revolutions. The Vietnam War was going on. Martin Luther King and Robert F. Kennedy were killed that year. You know, that was not seen as a great year. There's a lot of
COVID years.
COVID years, of course,
right?
2020, 2019, 2020 when COVID started. Or you could go, there's been a number of bad years.
A lot of
I think
epidemics.
we can understand
and wars.
that. And wars. Yeah, 1914, World War I started. That was pretty bad. But let's get back to way before any of those, the year 536, and find out why historians and other people say that year was the worst year in history. The good news is we didn't have to live through it because it was so long ago. But let's find out all about it. With COVID-19 and wars in Eastern Europe and the Middle East, you might think that the world has never been in such a bad way. But you'd be wrong. Some historians argue that AD 536 was the worst time to be alive in history, and they may be onto something. According to historian Michael McCormick, AD 536 was so bad due to a volcanic eruption. This eruption created fogs that blocked out the sun and kept areas of Europe and Asia in constant darkness for around 18 months.
All right, let's get started with today's article, AD 536, the worst year in history. Let's see what happened that year.
All right, well, to get an idea of it, we're going to start a little bit closer to the time we live in with COVID-19 and wars in Eastern Europe and the Middle East. You might think that the world has never been in such a bad way, but you'd be wrong. Okay, so these are things that have happened around now, around the time we live in now. Of course, COVID-19, as we said, that was more 2019, 2020. And then, of course, 2 years ago now, we had, of course, the attacks in Israel that led to a big war between Israel and Gaza. And, of course, we've had a war in Ukraine for about 2 or 3 years now. So, yeah, the world has been in a bad way recently. Things have not been going well. Disease, war, political problems that don't seem to have answers. So this is a time when there are definitely problems and challenges. Is it the worst year in history, though? No, apparently you'd be wrong if you believe that, because oh boy, there are some other years that were really bad. So let's find out exactly why.
Some historians argue that AD 536 was the worst time to be alive in history.
Okay.
And they may be onto something. That means that they may be right. Historians are people who study the past. If you see IAN at the end of the word, that's a type of person. So a person whose job is to study history. And they look at ancient documents, what happened before, and to study the past, that really helps us with learning about now and the future. The historian showed us the ancient necklace. Maybe it was like 1,000 years old.
Ooh, or even older than that.
Ooh.
Okay, so yes, people who study history, who know a lot about the things that happened in the past by doing research and reading old writings and stuff. So, you know, mostly they know what they're talking about, according to what information is available. It says, according to historian Michael McCormick, AD 536 was so bad due to a volcanic eruption. Ooh, okay, so a big volcano, or a fire mountain, as some people might describe it, exploded or erupted. We've seen this happen in different parts of the world. In Indonesia, the Philippines, it happens. Of course, in Iceland, we've had some volcanic eruptions more recently that caused problems with air travel. When volcanoes explode, of course, or erupt, it's dangerous for the people who live right nearby, obviously, but it can cause problems in the atmosphere that move all the way around the world, and that seems to be what happened here. This eruption created fogs that blocked out the sun and kept areas of Europe and Asia in constant darkness for around 18 months.
Oh, that's so depressing.
That is absolutely
but so many people
incredible.
got so sick.
As it erupted, it of course released lots and lots, millions of tons of ash and rock and very light stuff that floats up into the sky, and then the wind blows it around and it blocks out the sun, basically, and lowers the temperature. Farmers' crops can't grow. All sorts of things happen. This is similar to what killed the dinosaurs, right? The world saw the same thing in 1888 when Krakatoa, the volcano in Indonesia, exploded and world temperatures went down all around the world for a few years. So these types of eruptions can really have a global impact. It's quite incredible.
And what's really scary is that during this time for 18 months, there was constant darkness, which means that the darkness continued and never ended. That's what constant means, to keep going and going consistently for a period of time. That's very scary if it's darkness. Due to my injury, I am in constant pain. That means it never stops. Well, hopefully it will stop someday. But let's take a quick break and then we'll be right back to learn more about those scary 18 months.
Hello， 大家好，我是 Hanny。今天的课文主题是史上最惨的一年，因为有新冠肺炎，然后又有这个东欧和中东地区的战争。同学们也许会觉得世界从来没有那么糟糕过。可是你可能错喽，有一些历史学家认为西元536年才是史上最糟糕的时期。根据历史学家 Michael McCormick 的说法，西元536年之所以这么糟，是因为一场火山爆发。那这场火山爆发产生的烟雾遮住了阳光，使得欧洲和亚洲地区持续处在黑暗之中，大约长达了18个月。好，单字 historian 它是名词，表示历史学家。Constant 则是形容词，形容持续不断的、经常的。那补充单字 volcanic 它是形容火山的。那我们也学一下 volcano 就是火山。再看到 eruption 它是名词，表示爆发、喷出。那它的动词 erupt 就可以用来表达火山的爆发或是喷出的意思。那接着回到课文中。
At the time, the Roman writer Procopius noted that the sun gave forth its light without brightness. The eruption also caused summer temperatures to fall by 1.5 degrees Celsius. This may not sound like a lot, but it led to crop failures and mass starvation. To make matters worse, a disease soon after killed at least 1/3 of the Eastern Roman Empire's population. There have been many difficult periods in human history, including times of war, disease, and economic problems. But with its crop failures and constant darkness, AD 536 may well have been the worst year of the lot. Okay, AD 536, quite possibly the worst year in human history. A giant volcano explodes and lowers the temperature around the world, stops the sun from shining, and of course causes all sorts of problems for farmers and, growing crops and making food and stuff like this. But you might be saying, hey, this is AD 536. We didn't have CNN out there taking pictures and showing this on TV. This was way before anything like that. How do we know? Good question.
It was documented. At the time, the Roman writer Procopius noted that the sun gave forth its light without brightness. Oh, that sounds terrible. The eruption also caused summer temperatures to fall by 1.5 degrees Celsius. This may not sound like a lot, but it led to crop failures and mass starvation.
Jeez, that is terrible. Yeah. Of course, yes, when the temperature goes down, if that's around the world, that's a big change. I mean, these days we hear about global warming, right? Yeah. If the world's temperature on average around the world goes up by like 2 degrees, we're all in big trouble because all the ice will melt, the seas will rise, it creates all sorts of problems. So the opposite, having the temperatures go down, can also create all sorts of problems all around the world. The biggest of which is that farmers couldn't grow crops. On a cloudy day, the sun doesn't come through, and if the sun never shines, then of course the plants will eventually die, and no food. Because those are what crops are. Crops are things that you grow in a farm-type place in order to grow food or something that you can sell for money. But generally, when we think of crops, we think of food. So some of the most common crops around the world, of course, would be things like wheat and corn and rice and stuff like that. But we could also throw in apples and tomatoes and bananas and, almost anything that you grow in a farm to eat or to sell for others to eat. For example, the warm weather helped the crops to grow because there was no giant volcano that year. That's the way it should be. So that's pretty bad. People can't grow food, and starvation, people dying of hunger, was the result. Oh, but it got worse. To make matters worse, or to make the situation even more terrible, to make matters worse, a disease soon after killed at least 1/3 of the Eastern Roman Empire's population. So they know that the Eastern Roman Empire, the part of Europe and Asia around Turkey and Greece, that kind of area that the Roman Empire at the time controlled, a lot of people there died of a disease. So, it's COVID or something worse, cholera, who knows what it was. And I think probably because people were hungry, that probably made the disease more deadly, right? Because it's easy to get sick and die if your body isn't healthy enough to fight off this disease. So this is in a whole empire, the Eastern Empire of Rome.
An empire is a rulership with a person or a group of people that controls a lot of different lands, and they operate under the same political system. The empire controlled many lands, and in the case of the Roman Empire, it was a very, very powerful rulership for a very long time.
All right, let's get back to the article.
There have been many difficult periods in human history, including times of war, disease, and economic problems. But with its crop failures and constant darkness, AD 536 may well have been the worst year of the lot.
The worst year of all the years that we know history about. Because yes, of course, there are often problems in the world. Some of them could be economic problems. We've seen that in the last few years. Of course, during COVID, we had economic problems. Back in 2008, there was a big economic crisis around the world. When we say economic, we're talking about the economy, which is basically the business life of a country or a city or a group of people. Economic relates to business and money and things like that. So everything from how well the country's doing, do people have jobs, are they making enough money, are people able to find work, or are they all looking for work? And of course, the health of the businesses in the company. A lot of Taiwan's economic strength comes from making microchips and things like that, and also growing wonderful crops and things. So basically, economic is just the business life, how money is moving around and how it is affecting people. For example, the country's economic success happened because of the new president's policies. Well, hopefully that will continue to be a good place to live and they will avoid plagues and disease and famine and giant volcanoes exploding. Yeah, that's a pretty bad list to happen in 1 year.
Yeah.
I'm not going to complain about COVID much anymore.
No.
Because that sounds much harder than just staying at home and watching too much Netflix.
Yeah, that was fine.
Yeah.
We were okay.
All right, guys, take care of yourselves. And let's hope that 2025 is not as bad as 536. Because that was a real stinker. Take care. Bye.
刚刚说到西元536年有一场火山爆发，那它产生了烟雾，遮住了阳光，造成欧洲和亚洲地区大约有18个月的时间处于黑暗之中。当时有一位罗马作家有记录下来，他就提到说，太阳发出的光毫无亮度。那么火山爆发也导致了夏季的气温下降了摄氏1.5度，这听起来好像不多，可是却导致了农作物欠收，还有大规模的饥荒。那更糟的是，不久后还出现一种疾病，夺走了东罗马帝国至少1/3的人口。好，单字 crop 是作物的意思，那么 crop failure 就可以表达农作物欠收。再看到 empire， 它是帝国的意思 ，Eastern Roman Empire 就是指东罗马帝国。刚刚 Mike 老师谈到疾病，除了提到我们熟知的 COVID， 他还有提到 cholera， 就是霍乱，还有提到 plague， 是指瘟疫啊、灾难或是祸患。那我们也学一下 famine 这个字是指饥荒。老师还有用到 deadly 这个形容词 deadly， 虽然它是 ly 结尾，但它是形容词，形容致命的。好，课文最后写到，人类史上有许多艰困时期，包括战争、疾病和经济问题的时期，但由于农作物欠收还有持续的黑暗，这个西元536年很可能是其中最糟糕的一年。好 ，economic 这个字呢，它是形容词，形容经济的、经济上的。那文中用 the worst year of the lot 来表达其中最糟糕的一年 ，the lot 就可以表达某群体里面所有的人事物，用来表示整体、全部或是一切。好，这边3个重点，我们进入文法时间。我们来看第一个重点是 give forth， 表示发出、散发，像是发出光、热、气味、声音等等。这个片语跟 give out或是 give off 意思相同，但是它的语气会比较正式。举例来说 ，The lamp gave forth a faint glow。那盏灯发出微弱的光。那第二个重点是分数的表示方法。我们用英文表示分数的时候，分子是用基数，分母是用序数。那么分子是2以上的数字时，这个序数必须加上 s， 像 2/3 是表达2/3。举例来说 2/5 of the students passed the math test. 2/5的学生通过了数学测验。补充一下，1/2我们是要写作 a half， 那么1/4跟3/4则是分别写作 a quarter 跟 3/4。好，那我们来看一个例句是 A quarter of the staff are from China. 1/4的员工是来自中国。再看到第3个重点是 may have 加上过去分词 PP 的用法。情态助动词 may 可以表示推测 ，may have 加 PP 用来描述对过去事件或动作的推测。举例来说 ，Peter was supposed to be here an hour ago. He may have forgotten about the meeting. Peter 1小时前就应该到了，他可能忘记这个会议了。好，那么以上今天的讲解，同学们别走开，马上回来哦。
With COVID-19 and wars in Eastern Europe and the Middle East, you might think that the world has never been in such a bad way. But you'd be wrong. Some historians argue that AD 536 was the worst time to be alive in history, and they may be onto something. According to historian Michael McCormick, AD 536 was so bad due to a volcanic eruption. This eruption created fogs that blocked out the sun and kept areas of Europe and Asia in constant darkness for around 18 months. At the time, the Roman writer Procopius noted that the sun gave forth its light without brightness. The eruption also caused summer temperatures to fall by 1.5 degrees Celsius. This may not sound like a lot, but it led to crop failures and mass starvation. To make matters worse, a disease soon after killed at least 1/3 of the Eastern Roman Empire's population. There have been many difficult periods in human history, including times of war, disease, and economic problems. But with its crop failures and constant darkness, AD 536 may well have been the worst year of the lot.
Hey, it's Kiwi on the street. I'm Kiki.
I'm Winnie. And Kiki, I must say, as your sister, you give great advice. I would say you are as wise as an owl.
As a who?
An owl.
Hoo-hoo, hoo-hoo.
Anyway, it's time to play fill in the blanks.
It's time to play fill in the phrase. Okay, so today we have similes.
Some adjectives first.
Adjectives.
Here's the adjectives. And then here are the nouns.
I would just put all the adjectives
Sure.
on first,
Okay.
and then match the noun with it.
Okay.
Okay.
So, as free as a bird,
Okay.
because it could fly. Peacock, really not sure what that is. Ox. There are some strange vocabulary. Lion, as proud as a lion.
Okay.
As strong as a ox, I guess.
Okay.
And as brave as peacock.
Okay. Now, you have two that is correct.
How do they act?
How do they act?
I can tell you one thing. As strong as an ox is correct.
A peacock likes to show off its feathers.
Oh,
Okay, is this your final answer?
yeah.
Yeah?
Yeah.
And you are
Ding, ding, ding,
correct.
ding.
Okay, what did we learn today?
Let's play our favorite game, Fill in the Phrase. Today we are working on similes when you compare one thing to another. Our first simile is as brave as a lion. Known for being the king of the jungle, lions are not afraid of anything. They will eat anything. So when you are not scared of anything or anyone, you are as brave as a lion. Next, we have as strong as an ox. So you might think, well, why are oxen thought of as strong? Well, think about this. Farmers used oxen to pull a lot of heavy machinery. So if you are very muscular and very strong, some will say that you are as strong as an ox. Next, we have as proud as a peacock. When male peacocks want to impress the female peacock, what do? But of course, they strut around and show off their brightly colored feathers. So if you are very confident or you know someone who is very proud, you could say they are as proud as a peacock. Last but not least, we have as free as a bird. So what do birds do when they fly? They of course flap their wings. They are not in cages anymore. They are free as a bird. So they use those wings to fly. That's all we have for today. Kiwi later.